We're back. Yankee and the Canuck. I can't remember what episode, but it's 71 total for all of the episodes we're doing. That's pretty incredible. We've got a great guest with us. Booker is with us. We've got Edward again. We've got JC again. And you know what? Tonight we wanted to talk about the country was founded on protesters or Protestants or separatists who all fled either somewhere in Europe from some Orthodox church, whether it was the Yugoslavian Orthodox Church or the Russian or the Church of England or Catholicism. They were all fleeing for a chance to worship God in the way they wanted to worship them. And we've watched over the last 249 years that obviously Marxism has come into the world to separate people, take religion out of everything, and separate everybody into groups. But from a general standpoint, we want to look at where can the Protestants or Protestants, they were protesting, the separatists that still live here generationally later. I mean, my family was fleeing. They didn't get here until 1922, but other people will have stories that go all the way back to the 1600s or maybe the 1800s of when they were leaving to get away from this. And that's kind of where we wanted to start. So I mean, Edward, do you want to get rolling? And then I definitely want to give more time to Booker than we did last time.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's correct, and I think where the West. And let's just look at America by itself right now, where we're heading, and really where the nation's at today. The pulse of America today. I'm more interested in why is the government first now rather than God first, and what do we have? God at the head of the entire country. And it's even in the Pledge of Allegiance, I believe, one nation under God. What happened to that? How come it's now at the bottom, and where God was at the top, and now he's at the, if he's even mentioned at all, as I keep saying, and now hardly even recognized. And I think that wanting to worship governments are saying, as I said before, our lives will be so much better if we have the proper government in, or I can do and think better or be a better person. Now we're still supposed to put our faith in our Father, not in government. And we're there today where we just got to get the right government, and everybody's just trying and upset because they're not having the right government, or they do have it. And that's what, I think, and Booker, being that he's Christians like us and goes to, I think, a pretty big church in Florida, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Is that right, Booker?
That's true. Yeah, big church, but a biblical church. You have to be careful there. I think
Yes, you
that's
do.
yeah. I think that the churches that are growing right now in America are those that are very much biblically based, and they preach from the Bible. Those that have watered it down are actually losing members. So I find that interesting.
Let's just say that they've substituted social justice for the gospel of Christ.
That's
Oh,
right. hmm That's
very well
I
exactly.
mean,
said.
It's exactly what's happened. Yeah, yeah. They want you to feel good. Well, it's not always a feel good moment to read the Bible and see consequences for our actions. And I think we're seeing those now. But you bring up some great points about where the origins of this country come from. I don't know if you guys are familiar with John Locke and Roger Williams. They go back to early 1600s, and you
Yeah.
can
Hmm.
see. Okay, you can see John Locke's writings in our Declaration of Independence and then in the Constitution. He inspired people like Thomas Jefferson, Roger Williams. He was born about 20 years before John Locke. He ended up becoming the governor of Rhode Island. He was here at the founding, and he is another one of those that you were talking about earlier. I remember doing a piece on the Puritans. Proud to be a Puritan, I think it was the name of it. And if you look back to the founding of this country, yeah, the Boston Tea Party, there were Puritans there. Paul Revere's father was a Puritan, and that is who we are. But when it comes to one nation under God in the Pledge of Allegiance, that was actually added in 1954. And
yeah.
the interesting part is Roger Williams and also John Locke. Both of them were devout Christians, They were in the early 1600s. Both of them died. Well, Roger Williams was still around, I guess, at the founding of this country. John Locke would have died about 60 or 70 years before the Declaration of Independence, but his words are in the Declaration of Independence, and I find it very interesting that both of those men had such a profound effect on the words that we read. And both of them are Christians. And it was so important for them to make the Constitution not very secular. There's only God mentioned one time, and that happens to be when it says in the year of our Lord, where it was only dating the Constitution. So it was important for them, having come from where they came from. You mentioned a lot of different places in Europe where people fled to get here so that they could worship free. And it was important for them to make sure that we had, which later it was Roger Williams that wrote the separation of church and state, and that came later in a letter. It's not in the Constitution. A lot of people are confused by that. They think that it is. It is not. You have to look to Article 6 and then also in 7. But it's very important that we separate them. Now, the problem with that is the separation of church and state in some ways kind of leads us here where everybody is free to worship as they want to. But I think possibly your question, Ed, is more about what can we do about it now, since we are here where we are with Marxists on the doorstep. And I think as Christians, and that's what I am. I'm proud of it. People say I'm an evangelical, and I thank you for that. I appreciate that compliment. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if it's negative. Some people take it that way, but we have to look at ourselves. What have we done as Christians over the last 60 or 70 years or so that have brought reproach? When you look at people in the secular world that look at Christianity in this country, they see Jim Swaggart, Jim Baker. They see these people as the leaders of the church, and they see hypocrisy. Unfortunately, for those of us that are believers and Christians, we know that we are sinners, and because we are sinners, we need Jesus Christ. And for people that aren't familiar with it, they don't understand that. So I don't know if that answers your questions, just some thoughts there.
Well, Booker, let me walk you down this path real quick, because a lot of people, what you just said is absolutely true. They look at Christians, pick a big one that they can point out, right? And they say, look, they're clearly a sinner. They had an affair on their wife,
Yeah.
or they were playing games with money from the church. They were corrupt. And what thing I always come back to is I say, listen, what people don't understand about the church is, and they don't get this, is that it is a place, it's a hospital. It's literally a hospital for sinners to go to. It is not the resort for saints.
No.
We're all sinners, and that's where they look. I can see Edward motioning, but it's not a place
Sure.
for. It is not a place for saints to go hang out, have coffee and donuts,
Right.
and talk about all the downtrodden people that they're going to go out and help with their donation money that they took from the collection plate. And that's where it gets twisted for people who have never been to church, don't want to go to church, have no idea what the church is. They don't understand that we go there because even if we are feeling good that day, we're going there because we're still sinners, and it's a hospital.
Well, yeah, more to
I would,
that though. It's the only religion, the only one that recognizes that we can't do it on our own. All the other ones say if you just do enough of this or be enough of that or pray 5 times a day, you'll get there on your own steam. And we're the only ones that recognize we need Christ to get us there because we can't do it on our own with our fallen nature, which is why we go to church too, because we recognize our fallen nature and well, we need that intervention of something else, our Father, our Lord, to pull us through because we're not doing it on our own. It's just the enemy is way too powerful.
well, I actually would like to point out that when I see these weekend protests in DC and these other places, and everybody keeps talking about how, well, they're all white and they're all old. Well, of course they are. It's the Methodists and the Presbyterians that ran out of coffee and donuts at fellowship hour. and when they're out walking around looking for the lost glory of the civil rights movement. And unfortunately, that pollutes the politics of the United States to this day. I've mentioned Mike Wallace's Myron Wallace reaching out to Farrakhan in the 90s, trying to recombinate the civil rights coalition, and it's like, Myron, really, that's not the guy. I mean, he wants you dead, okay? And yet the Jewish folks seem to have this death wish from time to time. I love them dearly, but I mean, they're quite an enigma because we all struggle with it, and we share our holy book with them and everything else. And there's all sorts of cries about anti-Semitism, but I never hear anything about anti-Gentilism. And I will tell you that, having lived in New York, I know that anti-Gentilism is very, very real. And if you acknowledge that the Christ said that he could forgive sin, well, if he could, and I believe he does, and I've experienced it, then that means he wasn't just a prophet, he was the Son of God. All right? And if he was not who he said he was, then he was the greatest blasphemer in the history of all Western religion. And there's no way to square that circle. Those two things are incongruous. So all the happy talk about how, oh yeah, uh, we're all on the same page. We're not. We're not. We're just not. And social justice is not godly justice. We can't presume to know what God's justice is on this earth. We can't. And I mean, you look at that thing in the train ride in North Carolina. Where's God's justice there? I mean, a social justice person just doesn't even want to talk about it because that's the guy that they want to lift up and venerate and love on and all the rest of it. And we shouldn't be locking him up. Good God, we should have locked him up 10 years ago, and then that wonderful little girl would still be alive. And we can't escape the consequences for fatuous, self-righteous thinking that we're acting as gods, and that's what these judges are doing. It's total hubris, and it's a rot that needs to be. It's like you need to take an ice cream scooper and just absolutely do away with it. And the popular will is building here. I hear a lot of people worried about overreaction and all the rest of it. Good God, at least there's some reaction. And I've been wondering for so long when it'll happen. Just a few thoughts. I did want to add one more thing, Sean. Your intro is great, and I don't want to take us too far afield. Germans are a special case, and as you know, I'm not a special pleader for Germans. Most every horrible idea in government has come from Germans. I admit that. Marxism, the Frankfurt School. I mean, it's a disaster. But when you talk about people that fled to the New World, the Germans were reticent to do that because the truth is they're very organizationally oriented. They're structured. They're engineers. They're battlefield commanders. Their government pretty much, they operated with logic and common sense. But when this really hits home, when Catherine the Great recruited Germans to come and show the Russians how to grow food, Caspian Sea, Black Sea, little enclaves. In the United States, Booker, most of the Germans who came directly from Germany settled in places like Missouri, and they settled in places like Wisconsin and
Cincinnati,
Illinois,
Midwest.
Cincinnati,
Michigan,
Ohio.
right, all those Ohio, all those places, Wisconsin, and they're doctrinaire big government folks, and they have been socialist to a fault. Catholicism has something to do with it, Edward. All right, but at the same time, it does. But the Black Sea Germans and the Caspian Sea Germans, the ones that got a good look at Russian government, settled in Oklahoma, and the Dakotas and Nebraska, and they are the most libertarian voters in the United States to this day. So they can be taught.
That's a great
You
point. Good
just
point,
have to
JC.
hit them over the head. And I'm one of them. And the last 5 years, Booker, have been so enlightening for me. You can't even imagine. I actually would have voted for bitch McConnell. I mean, come on. You know, I mean, I voted for Romney. I'm so ashamed. Anyway,
You admit that?
I stayed home.
I'm riven with grief. I repent. I do. I need salvation. Honestly, I mean, I just can't believe it. Anyway, there you go.
Yeah. Well, Prussia, back in the day, that's where most of even our social school systems came from that. So it's not really Germany that we've taken a lot of that stuff. And I have a lot of great German philosophers. I still read today Immanuel Kant, his books and so many other ones. So yeah, Prussia, where a lot of that stuff came from, our school system, all the desks in a row, the bell goes at a certain time to start and at a certain time to stop. And yeah, that's where we got our programming from, Prussia back in those days. But yeah, it's still, what a shame. And yeah, let's not get into the Catholicism because that was big, especially before the First and Second World War.
And we're the most unique creatures we have in the United States are the German Jews. Because I mean, you just talk about so many cross currents, and you never know what you're going to get. But it's a source of great excellence and intellect and theology. Even I mean,
yeah,
guys like David Horowitz were absolute warriors, and they were amazing. And they diagnosed the rhino problem 30 years ago.
No, absolutely. Yeah. I get it. But where we're going, so that starts after post World War II in the late 1940s and 50s. But where I'm going is since 40s and 50s, 1940s and 50s. Yes. Obviously, then in our own government allowed it in. We just started importing things like Marxism. So it wasn't called that. It was called the Great Feminist Movement in the 50s.
Yeah.
50s and 60s. And then in the 70s,
really great.
It turned into something.
Worked out fantastic.
I want to come back to where, because there's people like me, there's people like some of you, there's people at JC that are just coming or saying, I want to come on board with this. Where do the Protestants, what the original Separatists were from William Bradford in 1610 of Plymouth, the Plymouth colony, how do we, those people, just say, look, government, we're going to infiltrate the schools. You can't tell us what to tell the schools. The schools, on the other hand, this whole, you can't, freedom of religion means the government can't force you into a religion. That was the entire point everyone came here for. There's a thing we'll get to later, but we can inflict our religion on the government. So how do we, as separatists, inflict that into government?
The separation of church and state was not to keep religious people from having influence in government. It was to prevent government people from donning religious authority to make COVID proclamations. Okay?
Good one.
That's what it was about. And like we've done with so many things, we've inverted it and we're clawing back. But how do we get there? I don't know.
Booker, I want to get your thoughts. You're a special guest tonight.
Well, thank you. How do you get it back? It takes people being active. And I've been in this, 5 or 6 years now. I can't get people active. If you don't go and do the work, then what you want to happen is never going to happen. And, I see it every day. If you look at politically, for the Republican Party, there were 400,000 precinct committee chairs available. That's how many there are across the country. 4 years ago, there were 200,000 empty. The Republicans didn't want you to fill them. And over that period of time, we could have filled those 200 seats and then we would have owned about 75% of the establishment Republican Party, and then we could have made a difference. But we haven't. And as hard as I pushed and tried, it really hasn't made a difference. People still just tweet and post thinking that that's going to make a difference, but it's from the grassroots, regardless of what it is. If it's, the school board you have a problem with, you have to get off your couch and go there. If it's the party that you're a part of, you have to get off your couch and go there. You can't just do it from your couch. And I think that's the biggest problem. Until people realize that we have to do it, that's the first step, then nothing is going to change.
Do you think we're just too reactionary? Because the fact is, nobody really did anything until they stole the election.
Oh, good one.
Well, yeah. We are reactionary, and then I have a lot of thoughts also about MAGA. On top of that, we probably not going to get into that, but we are reactionary.
I got all night. You can get into whatever you want.
I try to be preventive. I try to look at things long term. If you go back to after the 20 election, I started SaveYourRepublic.org to recruit poll workers across the country. General Flynn got a hold of it, promoted it, got about 2.1 million uniques in about 4 months. And then in 24, I did a Senate initiative to help get 3 senators elected. 2 of the 3 won. We probably delivered about $3 million in digital marketing for them from the grassroots level. And now I've written a book about the 28th Amendment, actually written the 28th Amendment. All of that is preventive. If the problem was in 20 that they stole the election because they kicked poll workers out, poll workers kicked the poll watchers out. Well, let's get the poll workers back there where they did the kicking out, because it was all Democrats back there. So that was the idea then. And now the 28th Amendment has to do with artificial intelligence. And again, that is prevented. But I think typically most people don't want to do the work. They don't get out and they don't go do it.
Booker, I got to tell you, in 20, that wasn't all they did. I mean, it was
mail-in.
It was all fronts. It was mail-in ballots. It was every possible way to cheat, illegals,
JC,
everything.
Where did those mail-in ballots go to?
The garbage.
Where were they counted? Well, no, where were they counted? Who decided to throw them in the garbage or not? That was poll workers.
Yeah.
So, so all that stuff that we saw in 20, one way to prevent it was get conservative poll workers back in the back rooms, because they are all Democrats, especially in places like Detroit where they boarded up the windows. Stacey Abrams in Atlanta had the Happy Face company put all the Democrats there in where they, the pipe burst allegedly. So that was
backed up urinal.
That's the way I thought about it then was, okay, well, let's prevent that from happening. Let's get a bunch of conservatives in poll worker positions so that we can see what's coming in, because we weren't there. And so, I know there was a lot of weird stuff in 20, but I try to find a way to fix things, There
was a lot of BS in 24 too. I mean, they, I don't know if you supported Hovde in Wisconsin, but they stole that. I mean, that was that 2:00 shit with a vote dump. It was close enough that they could do it, and they did it. And he had her. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about that one, because I called that race 53 Republican senators, which is where we ended up. And I knew that McCormick in Pennsylvania was going to win. He had incredible momentum, and I knew Tim Sheehy was going to win, and I knew Bernie Moreno was going to win. I thought Mike Rogers was falling. He didn't have enough momentum. So I actually called those 3, and I called 53 on the money. I missed the House. I called the House 222 to 213. And it's actually 220 to 215. So I don't know about that Wisconsin race. I just don't know about that. From all the polls that I had studied over months, it looked like that was going to be a struggle.
Well, you didn't. What you didn't count on in the House was that bullshit in California that went on for a month. They were still counting votes at Christmas. I mean, you cannot have that. By the way, after a week, they're not counting ballots; they're casting ballots.
Yeah,
they're finding them, aren't they?
What they're doing.
Hold on, let's go one more place. And
Joe Kent should have won twice now in Washington, but Washington State
Sure,
is
but
so corrupt. It's ridiculous.
let's go one more place before we just
To
go
lose
let it loose,
control.
right? Just let it loose.
No,
So,
I'll be
again,
quiet.
I
I
we
just have a
open
lot of
no,
thoughts.
no, we all do, and this is how it goes. We all just wanna talk about whatever's on top of our brain and get it out, I get it. Listen, but we were
Listen,
talking
he's
about
very thought provoking. Thank you for bringing him.
no,
All right.
Booker's incredible, and we're so blessed to
Mm.
have him. This is the second time he's been on the show. We love him. And a lot of our friends, honestly, that some of them are commenting in the background. Oh my God, you got Booker, and they're reposting it over on X, and we appreciate all the reposts. But here's what I want to. So here's what we got to look at constitutionally, and there's a way to do it. But um, we brought up right that we are in an era where we're stuck with people who are atheist, and those technically constitutionally are fine because freedom of religion means freedom of religion.
That's right.
Now let's get into the Muslim invasion.
Okay.
I've got a solution to that, but it's only because it's constitutional.
Be
I
bored.
in the fact, right, that it's a national security threat. But you look at the First Amendment, right? Freedom of religion. So who wants to go?
Well, I wanted to talk specifically about putting your faith in the appropriate place. But before we started this show, I did see Charlie Kirk had posted about getting rid of all Muslims in America because they're not going to integrate, they're not going to fit in. They do not have the same mindset as the West does as far as our God first, which, Jesus, he has a name, we're their God, Allah, and of course Muhammad, the prophet, going with that. It's so far removed from where we are. There's no way they can become a North American or American or any, because they just don't think and feel the same way. We, as a people, we find marrying 6 and 9-year-old girls offensive, rape gangs, we just don't do that. That's to us, that's wrong. Where they don't think the same. So I'm saying they cannot be the same as us. Now, maybe I'm going off on the wrong path here. Booker, what do you think? Of course, being a Christian, we're supposed to love our brothers and everything, but there's some things we have to call out and not accept. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think Charlie Kirk is too far there, but I appreciate that because I believe he has to be hyperbolic in trying to influence people to bring them to the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I think, I think that you also have to protect that religion, but there is a difference between Islam and Muslim. And Muslim people have been in this country for a long time. They have contributed in every war that we've been in. They have been a part of this country, but these radical Islamists have not. So that's the difficult part for me as a constitutionalist in defending the right for religion and free speech and things like that. That means that I also have to defend the speech of people I don't want to talk. I want them to shut up. So I also have to defend their right to free speech. I have to defend the right to people to worship the way that they want to. My job as a Christian is to live in a way that would bring people to say to me and say, what do you have? Why do you live like you do? Why are you happy even though there are injustices in the world? How can you? Because I'm not living for this world. I'm living for something else. That's my objective. And I think that is our responsibility as Christians. That's what we need to do better. And, Aaron Wrenn wrote a book. It's Living in a Negative World. I had him on my show before, and it's really a great book because it talks about America being a positive Christian country up until about 1964. I guess it was 94 until from 94 to 2014, it was neutral. And 2014 beyond, a post-Christian nation is living in a negative world. It's a really good book. I encourage you to get it and read it if you would. But it talks about, Christian communities being created. And you mentioned, I think you mentioned my church at the beginning of this hour. We just opened up a fully accredited college. We have an incredible high school. We have great sports teams. We are creating a community right there in our church, and we need to do more of that. We've gotten away from community. That's one thing I preach about quite a bit is, and I look at FEMA, Western North Carolina, and the fires in Los Angeles. What was the first thing that we do? Regardless of your political side of your aisle, the first thing you do is say, well, where's FEMA? Where's my $700 check? Even conservatives are now looking at government to solve their problems. 50 years ago, 30 years ago, we never would have done that. We would have helped our neighbor. We would have helped our community. And that is the way that Christians live and should live. And that's what the secular world needs to see out of us. They don't need to see Jim Baker, Jimmy Swaggart, but they need to see us walking the walk as we talk the talk.
No. I'm gonna go a little bit farther afield for you, Booker here. And I know this is a little bit of a sidebar, but the bombing at the Boston Marathon, where the Sarnov guys, radical Islamists that have been at their terrorist training camps, they've been over there in Uzbekistan or whatever stan it was, whatever, and they came back, and we all sat there breathlessly and waited for government to hunt that guy down and do something with him. And aren't we still screwing around with that clown? I mean, 20 years later, we haven't put him to death yet. I mean, come on. Where are we as citizens? Earlier Americans would not have messed around with that guy, and he wouldn't have lived through the day that he did that.
Right, but he wouldn't have lived through the day that he did that because of what he did, not because of who he worships.
But he would
and
have
there is a
gotten
difference.
it, right?
Yeah.
And we wouldn't have sat there and waited for government to find him. We'd have got it.
Yeah. But there is due process at the same time. But I totally get what you're saying, and I don't disagree with you. But I just would draw a line as the difference. He would have been dealt with because of what he did, not because of who he worships.
And Booker, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed still lives.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, and the you say 2014. I find that to be a very pivotal year because I think that was the year that you started to hear about IRS mistreatment of conservative groups and all the rest of that. I think that's the year that the Obama project came to full fruition, where the bureaucracy was weaponized against citizens. And,
by the way, I don't know if JC, I don't know if you saw this, but it just came out this afternoon that they finally fired the final person at the IRS that was with Lois Lerner and those that went after the Tea Party. It took how long?
Why not?
I think it goes all the way back to, it took 12, 15 years to finally fire one of those people. Yeah. But anyway, I'm sorry for the interruption.
She should have been out the next day.
Yeah.
And I mean, James O'Keefe was the only one with enough balls to go to her house, and if she's out walking her dog and runs away, and all that. That just come on, folks. I mean, come on. This isn't that hard. It really isn't. But we talk ourselves out of courage.
Well, pretty much. That's true. But one thing I wanted to definitely direct your attention to is what we're putting our faith into. It's well and good to claim being a Christian or whatever your affiliation is, but what we're and our definition of faith has to be believing in what is true. People don't really even have a good definition or grasp of what that word faith means. I mean, some people put their faith in money that it's going to rescue them from any problem. Some people put their faith in, there's all kinds of things, knick-knack, bric-a-brac, unicorns, all kinds of things, bent spoons, UFOs, you name it. They'll trust in just about anything. But, having our faith, our trust, our loyalties towards our Father, knowing that, whether the right government's in, we can still have a good life. Yeah, they may be against, oppress us, but having our faith that he'll pull us through still, that has to count for a lot, and where we have to direct more of our attention than what we're putting our faith in today. And I think that's the path we have to get back onto, believing in our Father, having our faith put in him rather than the right government or the right guy or the right president. Although I like Trump, don't get me wrong, but he's definitely not going to take us to the promised land, people. It's still got to be our Father. He's still at the head, or he should be at the head of our thoughts, our government, everything, rather than how we get ourselves so carried away by the political party or talk of the day.
Right. And yet Tim Kaine says that God the Father has nothing to do with it, that it's about government.
That's that Tim Kaine. I don't even. I got to say,
Who is he? Who
like
is that guy?
He was
I don't even
Hillary's
know who
he
he
was
is.
Hillary's
I'm
running
running
mate,
mate.
and he just
no, I'm
proved
being
why.
I'm
No,
being sarcastic. I know who
Yeah,
Tim
no,
Kaine
I
is.
understand.
It's just we shouldn't know. We shouldn't even talk about the guy. He's a
right,
loser.
right. No, true.
But this was said in our Senate, Booker. I mean, this guy took what his 5 minutes or whatever grandstanding time they got to put that out
But
there.
JC, isn't that exactly what we're talking about? Is
It
how
is.
they're
Yeah,
trying to remove Christ from everything and trying to say that our government wasn't founded on these Protestant beliefs. And that's where we are. We're with Tim Kaine now saying that how dare you believe that your rights are given to you by God? You're only allowed to have rights from your government. It reminds me of England
Oh
in
yeah.
the 16 and 1700s, and you're going to have a whole bunch of people that are going to say, you know, uh, we're not going to do it anymore. We're just not going to do it. Um, so if these people again want to do this, the problem is they've already taught, or you could say indoctrinated, or whatever term you're going to use. They've taught several generations, three or four at least, generations of American and Western youth, both combined, that Christ is not important. We took it out of schools. They taught everybody that you need to understand. You need to. Everybody needs to be representative. We need to have equity, not equality.
good
Equity.
Lord, good
How
Lord.
come? So to back to the conversation, this is where we're at, and this is where again I ask, how do we defeat this? Like I'm 47 years old. I have a TikTok, but I can't get on TikTok and talk to a 20-year-old and then have explain all of this all the way from William Bradford forward to today. How do we and we're aging, how do we defeat this so that they realize and understand the history of the country and why it's the most significant and important country in the history of the world, because it really is.
But who's taking that question on?
Well, I would. I just didn't want to jump in.
No,
You
go
know,
Yeah,
ahead.
go Booker.
That's you.
real quick, back
Booker,
to
I've talked too much. You're the special guest. Go for it.
going back to Tim Kaine though, JC. You know, if you don't understand that our judicial system is tied directly to the Torah, then you really need to understand the history of this country, because it is. And people need to understand that's what our judicial system is. So when you have people in our judicial system, these judges that they don't believe in God, they probably don't even know that history. They don't know where these laws and our justice system come from, but that's exactly where it comes from if you research that. So that's one thing. Now back to you. I'm sorry, Sean. I had that in my head and I had to get it out before I forgot it. How do we get it to I'm encouraged by what I'm seeing by the younger generation right now. They seem to be having revival. They seem to be searching for it. I know a couple of years ago when I was asked the question about this country and whether or not that it could come back and the children, our younger generations could come back. And I remember responding, I think the only thing that can happen right now for them to appreciate what they had was for them to lose it all. If you have a couple of generations of young people that have had a $1,200 iPhone in their hands since they were 8 years old, maybe the best thing for them to be doing is standing in a soup line or a government cheese 18-wheeler. And maybe then they would understand what a great country this really is and we should keep it. But I'm also encouraged in understanding and knowing that our country goes through cycles. And there are times of revival in this country. You can go back to the Civil War and how bad things were then, and then back into the 1960s, and you had Vietnam, and we came out of that, and things were good for 10 or 20 years. And I go back quite frequently. I'll quote Wilmer Kendall. If you don't know who he is, he was a Princeton political scientist. He was the mentor for William F. Buckley. He wrote the book Conservative Affirmation, published in 1962. And in that book, he basically said that conservatives need to put their foot on the neck of progressives. And we didn't. No one listened. And now we're having the same conversation again 60 years later. And we could say the same thing that Wilmer Kendall said back in 1962. And he wasn't the first to say it, but he's known for saying that. And
Reagan said it. I mean, we keep hearing it. And if you go back and listen to Reagan's nominating speech for Goldwater, the issues are still the same. They're just 10,000 times bigger.
Well, because I think the media allowed too many. Well, remember that woman who was said against having, the Lord's Prayer in school? That was in the 60s. I forget her name now.
64. Yeah, I mean, Booker pointed out 64. I mean, that's the taproot, man.
Yeah. And then, of course, we had the gay movement. Anita Bryant was big back in the late 60s and in the 70s. Remember her? She's from Florida. You should know her.
Well, and don't forget that things got so bad that 4 students were killed at Kent State. That's how bad things had gotten. And then all of a sudden, if I guess, I don't know, I'm old enough. I don't know about JC, but I remember the bicentennial, 1976. That whole year, everything was red, white, and blue, despite everything that we'd come through the last decade with the race riots and the Vietnam War and protest in the streets and 4 students dying, and then things changed. And that's the hope that I have. I don't look at everything like it's over with. I believe that it's worth fighting for, and I believe that the way to do it is getting active and making a difference every day that you possibly can. And don't just sit around and talk about it. If you're going to sit around and talk about it, go do something.
I'm older than you think, Booker. I mean, and every decade I'd say, hey, you know what? Am I going to learn as much these 10 years as I did the 10 years before? But I mean, the last 5 years, oh my God.
I'm looking forward to the point where I start forgetting stuff, because there's a lot I'd like to forget right now.
Yeah, me too.
As an aside, I was the guy who wrote the longest Facebook post of my life back when I actually participated there about the wonders of hydroxychloroquine and why it was so fantastic that pharmacists like me were going to help kick the pandemic, and COVID was going to be gone because the hydroxychloroquine was going to get the zinc into the cells and kill everything. And man, let me just say that was a hard lesson about what the biopharmaceutical complex is all about. And Robert Kennedy is learning the same lesson right now. Yeah. But the fact is, I think he already knew it. And let me just say, Booker, I got news for you, brother. As a Reagan conservative, the idea that I'm sitting here cheering for a Kennedy in 2025 blows my mind, brother. It blows my mind.
Welcome to 2025. I don't know if you saw the executive order late this afternoon that Trump signed. Kennedy was there with them. By the way, the whole administration tonight is eating dinner in Washington, D.C. somewhere. They're trying to show how safe the streets are now that the National Guard is there. Right. So they're out to dinner there. But the executive order they signed,
and they're not getting kicked. They're not getting kicked out of any restaurants either, are they?
No, they're not.
How about that?
Yeah. The executive order they signed goes back to pre-1997, which made pharmaceutical companies use every one of the side effects in advertising, which pretty much prevented them from advertising, because they knew that instead of a 30-second commercial on television, it would be 8 minutes, because they had to list all of them. And so that executive order was signed this afternoon. And anyway, that may be off track, but that just happened.
Yeah, no, your genitals are going to fall off, but don't worry, take it. It's all good.
Your blood pressure will be down, but you got that.
Well, of course it will, because there won't be anything to raise it.
Yeah, I get it.
Well, no, wait, JC, wait. What Bobby Kennedy is now exposing to everybody. You got to take a second and look back and go, well, the governments, they're telling us stuff now that we never knew. They're telling us it was the Saudis. That had nothing to do with Iraq. And you just got to, well, hold on. You got to go, wait. Where's the, you and I, Edward, probably Burger, we've all been talking about this stuff for 20, 30 years. But you got to go, wait, where's the spin? What is the spin they're doing now? Because, look, even if Trump, under this administration, 47, is there's new information coming out, you got to go, wait, it's way deeper than what we're seeing. And that's because and we're all well aware. We learned from the Germans. By the way, I'm a German descendant.
You
From
better
the
be
Germans,
Stromberger. I mean, holy crap! Yeah, you
from
better
the
be.
Germans, right? We learned they were experts in World War One and World War Two at PSYOP, psychological operations. And you got to go, wait, we imported a bunch of them to help us with both psychological operations, but also with our nuclear program. And go, wait, so when everyone says it's the Jews with 17 O's, Jews,
God,
you got to go,
Sean.
wait, is it? And then you get like everything is weird. And I go, wait, shouldn't we come back and focus on where our government started and stop focusing on all the distractions? That's my point.
Well,
That's
I
100%.
will say, yeah,
I
no,
preach that. I preach it every day. Everything is a distraction, and everything. The Epstein files to me is a distraction.
Oh,
What is that going to
come
change?
on.
What is that going to
Yeah.
do? And I could go on. It's every
Nothing.
day, every 24 to 48 hours, there's a brand new distraction. Meanwhile, the government is going to shut down here in about 3 weeks or less. And we have that. And then we have sanctions that should be coming on Russia. They've been sitting in the Senate for since April. And I think Trump's been a little bit slow to move on that. I know that he's trying to put this peace deal together, but I don't think Putin cares. He's going to have to do something with that. And that's much more important than these other things. And
I think the Hamas peace deal just fell apart today.
No, 100% it did.
It's just
Yeah,
a
it's
thought.
over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean that was William Wallace shit right there. Like in Scotland, how Edward the Longshanks, he invited everybody to a peace conference, and young William walks into the place where they're going to have the meeting, and they're all there hanging. I mean that's what happened today. That's the oldest trick in the book.
Yeah. Well,
you guys want to discuss the ceasefire? Just let us know what hotel room you're in.
Let me, I guess we're getting ready to end at about 9 o'clock Eastern time, right? You do an hour? Is that right?
Yeah, we do an hour. We got a little over 10 minutes left.
Okay, one thing, you were talking earlier about church being a place for sinners, and there's a great song I posted quite a bit on X by Corcoran and Company. It's called "Take Me Back to Church," and the song is a great song. It's a short song; it's less than 3 minutes, but it talked about exactly what you were talking about. Church is a place for sinners. It's the place that I belong. And I had an epiphany back, I don't know, 7, 8 months ago, maybe longer. I was listening to a sermon, and we had been following Paul along his missionary trips. And at the time, he was resting before he was going to go to Asia Minor. He was on his way. He was packed. He was ready to go. He prayed to God. He listened to God. He was quiet. And the Holy Spirit said, no, you're going west. You're not going north. You're not going to Asia Minor. You're going west, which led him to Ukraine and Lydia, which is an incredible, great story that most people watching and listening probably know the story. But it dawned on me that if Paul had not listened to the Holy Spirit and listened to God at that moment, that the greatest country in the world that has ever existed would have never existed, because from him listening and going west into Eastern Europe, Christianity then grew into Europe, that those people that we started this hour with that were frustrated in England not being able to worship and pray and worship the God that they wanted to, they came to this country. And from all the other countries that we talked about, that was all a result of Paul listening to the Holy Spirit and not going where he had planned to go, but where God wanted him to go.
Well, Booker, he started the Christian church. Jesus did not. It was Paul.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jesus did. Well, that was not part of his writ.
You know what's
He-
interesting with that is, JC, is that all of the Catholics will say he started the Catholic Church, and I say no, no, no.
okay, thank you. Edward likes that. Yeah,
Reread
okay.
that passage. It said he started the church, not the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
No, that was
I
Peter.
just found that interesting when I was listening to that sermon, and I was thinking about it as the sermon was going. I was like, wow, we wouldn't even
Well,
be
no,
here
but
had Paul not
Booker,
listened.
it's the only major religion that the founder didn't start. It was the power of his message, the road to Damascus, the scales falling from your eyes, and seeing the wonders of the Christ that inspired Paul to start the Christian church.
Yeah.
That's what
Well,
happened.
But the
it
point I'm
wasn't
trying to
here.
make is, in staying with the hour and what kind of where we started was, what can we do? That question's been asked a few times. What can we do?
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
we listen to God like Paul. And that's the
Well,
point I would make.
if we remove the scales from our eyes, right?
Well, yeah, but I mean, it's easy. It starts with a prayer, and if anybody needs help on knowing how to pray, I'll give you this little hint. You pray up, you thank God, you tell him how much you love him and thank him for everything that he gives you and blesses you with. You pray in, you tell him about the things that you need and the things that your family needs, and you pray out and you pray for everybody else. You pray for others in your life and those that need things, and you do those things in the name of Jesus Christ. Just a simple little formula for praying. If you're listening or watching and you don't know really even where to start, because a lot of people don't even know where to start there. Everything can start from that little simple prayer.
Amen.
True.
All right, so as we still got 8 minutes left, but again, so I want to look at this constitutionally. Hold on, I want to look at this constitutionally, and there is a constitutional way we can do this. The Muslim, and you're going to say, well, not all Muslims are bad. Look at Saudi Arabia; they have LIV Golf. Trump has money in them. Like all this stuff they're doing. And I'm going to
Donald
say, look.
Donald of Arabia. Yeah, they love it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just wait till he buys Gaza. Hee hee. But you gotta look at the Muslim invasion. There's been many. I mean, there's been Buddhist. There's been all kinds of Asian religions that have tried to invade, but the Muslim invasion, which was invited politically by people who want to destroy our country, let's have no doubt about that. They will they every place the Muslim religion, you could call it jihad, you could call it whatever you want to call it, and I'm going to say, look, I've met a lot of really incredible Saudi Arabians in my life. They still would prefer to conquer us. They just didn't have the numbers in our country yet, but now they do. And
Sean, they,
hold on, how do we look at this
are-
constitutionally and remove them from our country and bring back our country to the Protestant or Protestant or Separatist or whatever term you want to use, a Wikipedia be damned.
Yeah.
well, Booker's got the formula. The first thing you need to do is bring him to Christ. Then
You can't. You
the rest
can't.
becomes
You
elementary.
can't.
Well,
Look at
I'm not
let,
talking about I'm not talking
whoa.
about the Islamists, Sean.
I'm gonna totally bring in what they do, which is grape and murder.
Well,
Eh,
yeah, I
eh,
mean, Did you see the Brianna Morello tape? It's been
No.
all over X
I
where she
yeah,
had this.
dude, it's
Yeah.
so
Oh,
awful.
yeah.
I don't want to talk about it here. It's so
Yeah.
No.
awful.
I understand, but I mean that's the idea is the infidel is to be killed, and the white woman is theirs to take. That's the ethos. Sorry, just is.
That's that's a whole show in itself, though. Going through that, wow.
Well, no, I mean I'm glad she had a 9 millimeter with her. That's the part you didn't see on the film.
It's not a whole show. Because Edward, this is where you need to look. The Constitution allows for it, and where our God allows for it, that all of these people need to be expelled. All
Uh,
of them. No. Look, I know you don't have the same Constitution as we do.
no,
You're a
no,
Oh,
Canuck.
no, he doesn't even have a First Amendment. I'm shocked he's still on the show.
we hardly even have a constitution.
Well,
Whenever the link doesn't show up, I wonder if they got Edward. If Mark Carney said, "Oh, we can't have the Canuck."
When I'm swimming for it, pick me up in Detroit. I'm telling you, I'll be there.
Hey, earlier I mentioned that the Constitution does not have God in it, except for one place where it says, in the year of our Lord. But state constitutions do. And I think that's very interesting and also very important because we are a republic of individual states, and individual states' constitutions actually say God in it. So anyway, I just had that little tidbit. I thought I'd throw that out there.
Both
yeah,
are,
no,
both
it's
are
totally true.
federalism's the only thing that's saved us. You know that.
Yeah, that's correct.
What was that, Sean? I didn't hear you.
No,
No,
federalism is
yeah, we all agreed. It was totally correct.
yeah.
And again, here's the quandary, right? If you're going to have absolute freedom of religion, then that's where the political left is going to go, oh, we're totally going to accept Islam.
Mhm.
And I look into other articles of the Constitution or the amendments and go, no, this literally is something that will absolutely destroy our nation. And we just use the Constitution and say, you're not allowed to be here, just like Trump first term, Trump 45, and do it. And I don't care if you call me a racist. I don't care if you call me a Islamophobe. I don't care if you call me a bigot. And it's time to stand up again instead of just accept everybody at face value and just let them dominate us.
How about
So,
how about I
Sean,
call
let
how
me
about I call you brother? All right. I mean, the fact is those European countries that have all the issues like France and Sweden and all that, once they get above 5% of the population, you start to have this nonsense.
let me ask you a question,
Yeah.
Sean. Let's assume that we do that. We expel them all. Do you have a Christian nation? You said to expel them all to get us back to a Christian nation. I would argue, even if you do that, you still don't have a Christian nation, and that's the problem.
That is a
Even
problem.
even if you get them removed, you do not have a Christian nation right now in this country. If you could get the people in this
That's a good
country to
point.
become Christian, then you may not have to expel them because we would be the majority. And so that's my question. I would say that.
So my response is going to be, we don't have time for that. And here's why we don't have time for that is because we've been invaded. If you don't think we've been invaded,
I know.
look around. Look at what happened in Charlotte. Look at what happened, and that may not even have anything to do with Muslims. Just start looking
But it
around.
does. It does.
Hold
It's
on.
cultural rot.
We have to expel the invaders, even if they're not Muslim. You can't tell me somebody from Somalia is not Muslim, but you also can't tell me somebody from Venezuela is not a part of the cartel. You also can't tell me that somebody from Ghana. I don't know how the fuck somebody from Ghana even gets a
Sean,
ticket.
Uganda, Momdami.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we imported the third world
I
on
know.
purpose. The third world needs to go back to where they are. And if you can call me all the names you want, Booker, all of them, until we recover from that and expel them, then we can finally start to bring people back to Christ. Because you're
Well,
not going to go. Hold on, I've had one of my daughters. She went down to the Dominican Republic on a mission, a Christian mission, and she's like, "This place." She came back. She was 17 years old. She's like, "This place is a complete shithole. Like, there's
mhm.
no way." Like, all they were doing with our mission work was accepting money and food from us. We spent a week
That's what it
there,
is.
and they're never going to convert. They're never going to accept Christ. They don't give a about any of
No.
this. They just were happy that somebody was giving them something that wasn't, I'm going to make a funny dogs and cats, because if you get to Haiti, we can talk about the dogs and cats, which is a real thing. And
Oh,
that's where the
I'll
problem is.
wear my shirt.
You
Yeah.
look. God said, spread the word. There's people who won't listen to the word, Booker. They won't hear it. They want nothing to do with it, and they haven't for 5,000 years.
Sean,
I have
there
Well,
actually, go ahead.
go ahead, JC.
No, there actually is an answer, and it's embracing Western economics in foreign lands. The lots of money to in younger days was called Opportunity International, where they talked about why a guy that was with. I'm sorry, this could be a whole nother show. I hope you have Booker come back, but the idea the idea that we're not interested in your savior because we need jobs.
oh,
And
wow.
and the guy from Bristol Myers Squibb, who was the sponsor that did this, asked, "Why won't you accept my savior?" Well, we don't have anything to contribute. We don't produce anything. We don't even have 10% to put in the plate because we don't produce. We don't have economic growth. And so micro enterprise development was his response to that. And you actually were able to make some inroads and have people get faithful and believe in the Savior and contribute to their communities with business loans that they paid back about 98%. And it's a really complicated topic, but the point is, as long as you're with the NGO complex and the overseas aid agencies like USAID, we're screwed. We're not going to be able to evangelize anybody. We're not going to be able to bring the world to Christ because all they see is globo homo.
We're
And I
all
mean
right.
that's what the CIA is all about.
We're over time. We're over time. I want to give Booker one last word before we run this out. Booker,
Thank you,
Yeah.
Booker. I'm sorry I talk so much.
Sean, let me try to answer your question. I see. I believe that there are laws that we already have on the books that would allow us to expel 98% of the people that have come in here. I think logistically we have a lot of problems in doing that, and I don't believe people are being honest with themselves. You're talking about 25 or 30 million people. From a selfish standpoint, you're not even looking at what it will do for you and your family and your own economy if you were to, like a vacuum, disappear 30 million people from the United States of America. So I think there's laws. I don't think you need the Constitution because I am uneasy to use or change the Constitution, especially when it comes to religion and crossing that line. But I think there are laws here that we can expel them, as you said, and deport them with no problem with the laws that we have. We just need to enforce them. Unfortunately, at the clip that we're going right now, Donald Trump will be able only to get about 2.5 million of them out in 4 years. Hopefully, a lot deport. I think if you draw up the money, you mentioned USAID, you dry up the money, and then they're going to walk home on their own. But anyway, I'll end it there. I'll just encourage everybody. My show's on Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern time on America Out Loud Talk Radio. You can hear it on iHeart. It's available as a podcast on 50 or 60 different platforms, Spotify, Pandora. America Out Loud is the home of Dr. Peter McCullough's show, Harvey Risch, Randy Sutton. Do I got to wrap it up? Yep. And then also my brand new book it came out July 27th. It's called It's Artificial Intelligence, The Fight for the Future of Humanity, Making a Case for the 28th Amendment. Just search Booker Scott on Amazon and you'll find it. Thank you guys for having me back.
We got to go, everybody. We got to go. Again, Booker Scott, you can find him on all platforms, to be clear with that. We're so glad he joined us here on Rumble, but we're also on YouTube. We're on X. We did everything that we could possibly do. You know what? I will tell you, Booker, most of the comments, Laverne Spicer showed up in the comments.
Hey, Laverne.
Yeah,
all right.
She's having a good time.
Booker's a celebrity, man. All right.
Over there.
I was on Eric Bowling's show about a month ago with Laverne. She was on that show too, and she's been on my show too. I love Laverne.
Absolutely awesome.
Got some star power, brother.
All right. we gotta close this one out.
Tell Laverne to give me a follow.
You gotta earn it, brother.
Counterfeit cash on X.
We loved it. It was a great show. Ran a little bit long. Thank you, Booker. We always love you.
Thank you. I appreciate it, guys. Good to talk to you.
Thank you, brother.
All right, you guys have a good night. Thank you.